In the years that I've been collecting knives, I would say for over 2 decades now, I've gone through my own personal evolution of what makes a good knife collection for my own uses and for my own purposes. In this episode, what I'd like to do is share with you my own estacado rules of knife collecting, specifically based off of my own key takeaways and learnings through my several decades of collecting knives and more recently swords. I hope this is something that you can find very useful, and my hope also is that this will help you avoid some of the mistakes that I've made over the years. Rule number 1 in estacado knife collecting is for you to acquire only what you want. Sounds pretty simple. There's a very clear line between acquiring what you want versus what you like. When you like something, it's relatively temporary. You see something on YouTube, somebody does a review on it, or you see something on Instagram, or you see a friend carrying a particular knife, and then you just happen to like it. And a lot of times, you don't even know what's making you like this particular knife. Maybe because it's new, or maybe because you're kind of swayed by somebody's opinion of a specific knife, or maybe you just learned something. But regardless of what you feel in terms of acquiring something, you're going to want to avoid these types of feelings as a basis for a decision to acquire a knife. A lot of times you're going to acquire them and then you're going to end up with some sort of buyer's remorse simply because you like it, but you have some sort of buyer's justification when it comes to purchasing a new knife. So after you purchase it, a lot of times you come home, take a look at it, wipe it down. If it's a folder, you flick it open, flick it closed. What you were really experiencing was you kind of wanted to kick the tires with it. And that's what a lot of us do. And that's a lot of what I did in the early years of my own knife collecting. I really just wanted to get a tactile sense of the knife. When you first get a knife, for instance, what you have here is a Cold Steel Frenzy. When you first open that box and you click it open, there's that cool factor that comes with it. Wow. But what is the thought process that goes into that wow? I can't believe I'm holding it. I can't believe I own this. I can't believe I spent money on this. So now that cool factor is really overcoming you because now this thing that you've imagined is now in your possession. So when you first experience owning something that you like, you go through this kind of honeymoon phase. So in my early years, when I was purchasing knives, what I was really looking at, especially when I was making these acquisitions based off of a feeling of liking something, was that I just wanted to get a tactile feel and an opportunity to tinker with something I thought was cool. And more often than not, it was actually pretty cool. But over the years, what I've learned is that once you acquire something, you tend to spend more time with something that you want. And when you want something, you have very clear parameters on why you want that item, even before you knew that item existed. When you like something, you tend to see it first, and then you kind of go, wow, that looks pretty cool. I wonder how much that is. Then if you have the money for it, you shell out the money, and then you purchase it. I've come to define a very narrow criteria for wanting a particular knife, or more recently, a particular sword. The first parameter is this something that I'm going to use? Now, there are two kinds of uses. The first one is, am I going to use it in the field? Meaning, as some sort of work knife. Is this something that's going to be durable, reliable, also relatively easy to sharpen? Is this something that's not going to fail me on the field? The other philosophy of use that I have is as it relates to tactical use. For instance, let's take a look at this Cold Steel Voyager. We want to make sure that, first of all, it's legal for you to even carry. So you want to take a look at the legality of the ownership of the tool, but also number two, is it even legal for you to carry? Number two, your ability to carry it. Are you able to carry it in your work pants, your casual jeans, or your business casual situation? Aside from the ability to carry it in a discreet manner, you want to make sure that the handle ergonomics are such so that it actually conforms to the kind of grip that you're using. There are many kinds of grips as it relates to the tactical use of the knife. Whether you're looking at a heaven grip or an earth grip, an edge-in P-call type of style. Depending on what system you happen to be studying, you want to make sure that the knife is versatile enough so that when you're having to execute the techniques that you're using, your knife can actually live up to those expectations. The third criteria I have is the criteria of study. When I acquire a knife that I want, a lot of times it's because I'm going to study the style, the history, and the martial tradition and practices that tend to come with the specific knife. You're seeing here right now is the Benchmade 85 Balisong, and this was gifted to me by a friend, but by gifting me this wonderful knife, this actually forced me to study the history of the Balisong and revive some of the practices that were handed down to me by my father. And what's interesting about the use and study of the Balisong is that, in my opinion, it has this reputation, and rightfully so, for being a great tactical tool, but what I've found is that it is just as good in the field as it is for tactical purposes. Let's take a review of rule number 1 of the Estacada philosophy of knife collecting. Number 1, acquire what you want. Make sure that you have a very clearly defined criteria relating to work use, tactical use, and study, which includes the historical study of it, you're researching and reading, but also the training of the tool. Avoid purchasing knives that you just like. It's an emotionally driven decision. So as much as possible, try to acquire only what you want, which has a very strictly defined criteria, and avoid the knives that you happen to have a like for, but not have a use for. Rule number 2 is to handle each knife with care and intentionality. Strangely enough, when I first get a knife, for example, the TCAL 007 fixed knife, the first thing I do is actually wipe it down. I want to have a great understanding of how I'm going to care for a knife. A good knife in my collection is going to serve me more than I'm able to take care of it. It's going to give more to me in terms of my ability to study, in terms of my ability to train, but also my ability to be able to do my work tasks as far more efficient and safer. So the least that I can do when I have a new knife is to create a protocol for its care. In fact, that's the first rule that I have when it comes to acquiring a knife. Aside from making sure that it fits my criteria, the other thing I ask myself is, do I actually have the time to take care of this knife? Do I have the time to wipe it down? Do I have the time to oil it? Do I have time to inspect the handle, to go through every aspect of it so that no dust has collected on it? I want to make sure that I make time for the care of the knife, because when I do that, what I'm actually doing for myself is creating this discipline to make sure that I always have some sort of time blocked out for the care of it, so that this isn't just another item that is thrown into a desk drawer. This is an item that is first of all going to teach me how to value something and then care for it. So creating that protocol and that schedule for how to care for a knife is one of the important criteria for me to decide whether it's something that I even want. I want to make sure that it's something that I can care for. I want to make sure that a knife is very well cared for, and I create a schedule for it, sometimes weekly, sometimes on a monthly basis, to ensure that it will always serve me in my time of need. But most of all, I treat them as if they are a member of the family. On another practical level, because I train with them so much and I spend so much time with these knives, they're almost like training partners. And as any good training partner, you want to make sure that they are taken care of, they don't get injured, they don't get hurt, and you also don't abuse them, because they're giving a lot to you to make sure that you continually improve. So this is a very important aspect of my knife collecting philosophy. Do I have the time, and have I created a protocol for its care? But also want to make sure that I have given it the appropriate intentionality, meaning that not only am I caring for it, I'm studying its design, I'm studying all the aspects that went into the material production of it relating to metallurgy, ergonomic design, and ultimately knife design. This sense of care and intentionality goes to a whole nother level once I receive a custom knife. And in this instance, what we're looking at is the Rainmaker buoy designed by Bobby Rains II. The person who creates a custom knife, specifically if they've taken a look at my physicality and my athleticism in terms of how I move with a bowie knife, and then they create something that is so optimized to me, what that means is that they applied a higher level of care and intentionality when it came to the design of the knife to ensure that my own training and my own improvement is something that is augmented by the custom tool that they have created. My own care and intentionality by the time I receive a custom built knife from a maker goes to this whole other level. There are 3 subset rules under the care and intentionality rule of the Estacada knife collecting philosophy. Number 1, clean all your knives and swords on a monthly basis. You don't have to oil them every month, but you got to wipe them down every month. Make sure that you remove all the dust bunnies. Make sure that anything that could be forming on the blade is wiped down, especially if it's a form of moisture. Number 2, handle at least 10 of them weekly on a rotating basis. That way they remain familiar to you, they stay top of mind, and it is something that you can, if need be, able to use whether it's in a work situation or in a tactical situation. Third subset rule is train and carry at least 2 knives daily. You could carry a balisong daily, and when you get home, train your bowie knife and rotate that out on a daily basis. That way, you're always familiarizing yourself with the knives and swords that happen to be in your collection, which leads me to one of the more important rules of the Estacada knife collecting philosophy. Rule number 3, never sell. Never sell your knife. Never sell your sword. If you're following through on rule number 1 and rule number 2, you now understand that these knives and swords, they are in your care. The Japanese and the Filipinos have gone so far as to even say that these swords and knives have their own spirit, have their own soul. So they're relying on you for their care. But in many ways, they've given as much as they can to you as well. This particular rule is important to me because as somebody who's been living in New York and has gone through the ups and downs of the economies of this specific city, I can assure you that I myself have gone through my own challenges in terms of just sometimes making ends meet. But the idea is that whether I'm completely successful or just barely skimming by, I always allow it so that I am fiscally responsible enough so that I've never had to sell any of my knives or any of my swords. And I'll admit, this is a very hardcore approach because end of day, these are all material items. You can always sell them. You can always put them up on eBay or always donate them to a Goodwill or Salvation Army or even sell them to friends. Yes, that option is always there. But by that time, you have categorized these items that you have cared for, that you have trained with, that have given so much to you in terms of their reliability and durability. By that time you have decided to sell these items, they're no longer your training partners. They're no longer a part of your family. They're disposable items. Once you categorize a knife and sword in your collection that you train with, practice with, and care for as the same level as your last iPhone that you trade in so that you can get the new model, you're no longer a knife collector. You're not even a practitioner. You're a consumer. Nothing wrong with being a consumer. But by the time you pursue this particular practice and passion, this leads me to what I believe is the most important rule in my own Estacada philosophy of knife collecting. Once you've gone down this path, pursue it without compromise. Get only what you want. Get only what you will study with, only what you will train with, only that which you will care for with extreme intentionality, purpose, and super laser focus. Because when that time comes, when it's your time to go, because all of us have to go at some point, these knives and swords will be so cared for, will have received so much of your energy, so much of your positive intentions, and also their physical care and maintenance. You now have something that you can pass on, that has extensive value, not only to people that you love, but for people who love you and care for you. They have a piece of you as part of their own personal history and their personal memories of you. How many times have we heard in the knife community how much a beloved knife that probably cost $5 or $10 maybe in the 1950s and 1960s, or maybe $40 in the 1970s, and may not even be made of the best steel, but because it was a knife that was passed on from their grandfather to their father and then to themselves, which they will then pass on to their kids, that's value. Now you don't just have an item that happens to be cool. You have something of value that you can pass on that was at one point an important part of who you are. That to me is the most important lesson I've learned when it came to developing my own estacado philosophy of knife collecting. Once I pursue this with the right focus and the right care, I now have something to pass on. But at the same time, I have something that has given to me. I have several hundred knives in my collection, and each one of them have given me so much enjoyment, given me so many life lessons that when it's my time to go, I'm not parting with these knives. They're parting with me. So it's time for them to be owned by somebody else, to be in their care, so that once they're in their care, those individuals will then learn and how to care for them and train with them with the right intentionality, so that they can then come up with their own estacado philosophy of care and intentionality, not just for the knives and swords that they own, but ultimately for the life that they live while they are here. I really hope you enjoyed this video. Thank you very much for letting me share. Stick around, stay tuned, more videos to come.